You should have just watched part 1 of this lesson, so let's move on to part 2. We have a couple more questions to answer about Vanessa and the bottles that she's making for her baby. So this is the information that we found out from the previous video. We wrote a table and compared scoops to the number of ounces of water we use. And we also found out that the unit rate for this situation is 3 ounces of water per scoop. Okay, and here's the graph that we're looking at. Okay, so the first question that we're going to ask on this video is write an equation to relate the ounces of water to the scoops of formula. So we're going to write an equation that will help us figure out how many scoops of formula I would use, or how many ounces of water I would use, based on how many scoops I want to use. So let's extend this a little bit, and let's say I have S scoops of formula. Okay, S is a variable and it represents any number that I could choose for any number of scoops. So it could represent 0 scoops of formula. It could represent 50 scoops of formula. It could represent 21 scoops of formula. So the question is, how many ounces of water combines with S scoops of formula? Well, I know that 3 ounces of water combines per scoop. So I take 3 and multiply it by how many scoops there are, and that tells me how many ounces of water that I would use. So notice right here I had 2, and if I times it by 3, that gives me 6. 3 times the number of scoops. Okay, this one also, 3 times the unit rate of 3 gave me 9. 4 times the unit rate of 3 gives me 12. Okay, so if I just multiply the number of scoops by the unit rate, that tells me how many ounces of water that I would use. So we're going to use this to help us write the equation. So 3 times the number of scoops that I use is equal to the number of ounces. And let's abbreviate ounces with just a Z maybe. Okay, so 3 times the number of scoops equals the number of ounces of water that I would use. Okay, so this is an equation. Finally, the last question says, how many scoops of formula must Vanessa use to make a 9-ounce bottle for her baby? Now there's 2 ways we can figure this out. We can look at the graph or we can use our equation. But let's use our equation since we went to all that work. So we have 3 times S equals the number of ounces that I would use. And in this situation they said how many scoops for a 9-ounce bottle. So that means Z needs to be 9. So we need to solve this equation for the variable S, the number of scoops. Well, 3 times what equals 9? Oops. 3 times 3, right? So S should equal 3. So the number of scoops that combines with 9 ounces of water is 3. Now, I also said we could figure out by looking at the graph, and we could if we just find 9 ounces. So here's ounces and here's 9. Follow it over to the line and see how many scoops that corresponds with. 3. Okay, so that's a good way to check our answer. So 9 ounces of water combines with 3 scoops of formula. Okay, so that's the last video on graphs. Go ahead and move on to your next lesson video.